heard of brittle bone? Okay, what happens is you get too much mineral and you get brittle bone. People fall just from here to here and they break their leg, okay, because the bone doesn't have the strength, it's too brittle. Also, you've seen people that don't get a lot of fruits when they're younger. Actually, it's vitamin D, I guess, from the sun. And they get the bow legs, rickets. Thank you, I was trying to think of rickets. That's because they have too much inorganic and not enough mineral. They don't have enough hydroxyapatite. And so it becomes rubbery and they start to bend because they can't hold the force of the body. Okay? So you need to have a proper combination of inorganic and organic for that bone to be of optimal strength. Okay? What you need to know about these, where do you find compact bone? On the outside. Okay, where do you find spongy bone? On the inside. What do you find inside spongy bone? Red bone marrow or yellow bone marrow. Okay, what's the difference between spongy and compact?
The compact's more solid, where spongy's interlace.
What do we call those finger-like projections in spongy bone? Exactly. Tra what? Trabeculae. Trabeculae. Okay, trabeculae, if you look at that picture, you see all those hair-like structures. Looks like a spider web on the 342. The picture on the top picture of that bone, that's all trabeculae. It's all those finger-like projections that stick out and hold it solid. Okay. Why do you want to have spongy bone, not just to hold red or yellow bone marrow, but why else?
That would give more stability, wouldn't it?
It gives it more stability. It makes the bone stronger, but what else does it do? If I have a 1 pound steel rod that's solid, I say 10 pounds because it's longer, what's going to happen when I have it this long? It's going to droop. If I have a 10-pound steel rod, it's probably twice as long, and it's hollow in the middle, what happens? It's more rigid. It gives it more strength. So having that open space in the middle actually strengthens the bone. But what else does it do? Which one can you pick up easier? The one that has the hollow center. It's much lighter. Okay. So if our bones were completely 100% solid, our muscles would have to be 10 times bigger just to hold us up. We would be huge. Some people say they're thick bone, big bone. It's actually kind of true. They can be. And we'll talk about that in 2 modules of why that happens. But what happens is the thickness of their walls of their compact bone can vary. Okay, so as it varies, what's going to happen to the inside diameter? So it gets smaller or larger too. Okay, so the bones can actually get thicker, which makes them more heavy. So some people are saying, I'm not fat, I'm just big boned. That's why they're saying it. That's my makes me feel better and lets me sleep at night, so just joking. So okay, so know the difference between compact and spongy, where you find it, what their kind of differences are. One's more airy, has space in between it, where the other one's very compact. What do we call bone cells? Osteocytes. And where do they sit in the bone matrix? In the lacunae. Exactly. Now, the one difference between the bone and the cartilage is bone has these little finger-like projections on their osteocytes that they use to communicate with each other. What do we call those? Cannuliculi. Okay, the cannuliculi is little openings that allow the tentacles from one osteocyte to go out and touch the other osteocyte so they can communicate between each other. Okay. So that's
in the cartilage. They just close enough that they
close enough they can talk to each, or they can communicate, or the matrix is enough to where they can get through. They can diffuse through the
Still
extracellular.
sitting there.
Yeah. Whereas with the bone, it's so solid, you can't get any diffusion through it, so you have to have these canaculii to communicate one to another. Okay. Where do you have compact bone? We talked about that on the outside. And where do you find red and yellow bone marrow? What's that? Spongy bone, but I guess we'll talk about the different types of bones in 2 modules, so we won't worry about it. Mainly in long bones. Anything that has a long center, actually your fingers have them too, but anything that's longer than it is wide has marrow in the middle of it. And when you're younger, it's mainly all red bone marrow, which produces red blood cells. What is yellow bone marrow? No? Fat storage. So as we get older, our red blood marrow turns into yellow bone marrow. That's why anyone know where they take bone marrow for a bone marrow transplant? Close. From your hips, from your hip bones. Your hip bones, your mediastinum, and there's one other location, I'm trying to think, that pretty much stays red bone marrow. Pretty much the rest of your body goes to yellow bone marrow. That's why they have to put those needles in the top of the iliac crest, drill holes, so they can suck out your red bone marrow. Very painful from what I understand.
So would adipocytes be there?
Mainly your adipocytes are going to be around the body, around muscle, around in your area, around organs.
Bone marrow fat.
Yeah, it's just fat storage. It stores triglycerides, but it doesn't have adipocytes.
Not necessarily cells.
Not necessarily cells, just a storage area, as I understand it. And then the exact opposite of a solid matrix would be the full liquid matrix, which we consider blood. Is blood a connective tissue?
Yes.
Yes. It is a connective tissue. You might see that on a test. Is blood a connective tissue? Yes, it is. What is its matrix? What is the extracellular matrix of blood?
I want to say plasma.
Plasma, exactly. What are the formed cells that you might find in it? Platelets, white blood cells, red blood cells, and your immune cells. Okay. Those, well, we talked about cells that are floating around in the matrix. We talked about fibroblasts, adipocytes, fibrin, all those different things. Okay. Those are floating inside a matrix or held inside a matrix. Blood is the exact same way. You've got the red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets being suspended in a matrix, plasma. Okay. So it is a connective tissue. It follows all the rules of connective tissue. What is lymph? It has to do with the immune system.
Filtrated blood.
It's filtrated blood. We have what's called a lymph system. Does all of the blood that goes out of the capillary beds come back into the capillary beds? No. If we didn't have the lymph system, what would happen to us? What happens if you have liquid go out, it doesn't out into the tissue, that doesn't all come back into the tissue or back into the blood?
You get edema?
You get edema. We'd swell up like a big old balloon if we didn't have the lymph system. All the extra liquid that can't be put back into the blood goes through the lymph system. It gets put back into the blood system, in the subclavian veins up here, under your clavicles. Okay. So there's a system along with the blood, your veins and arteries, there's a system that runs throughout the entire body that collects fluid and takes it back to the cardiovascular system. That's called lymph. I think all you really need to know about that is that it's filtrated blood with pretty much just fats in plasma. That's pretty much all it is. There's a nice little review on the next page. It doesn't tell you every single type that's in there, but it tells you the different types. So you have dense connective tissue, you have loose connective tissue, bone, cartilage. Okay, so that's a decent review. But that page that I gave you, you can put those all in there, the different types of each one of them, loose, dense, cartilage, bone, blood, liquid, put them all in there and tell where they're at, where their locations are. You'll get a good grade on that. Now you're up to like 95 on the test. Between your epithelial locations and identification and your connective tissue identifications and locations, it's going to be most of your test. You're going to have some on the glands, you have some on cell junctions that we're going to go over right now, and just maybe one or two questions on muscle and nerve, and that's it. And you're done. Easy, right? Yeah, see? He agrees with me. All right, so real quick, cell junctions, there's 5 types of cell junctions. This is how we said cells, take a bunch of cells, make up a what?
An organ.
For tissue, a bunch of tissues make up a organ, okay? Well, if we can't hold the cells together, can we make a tissue? No. Okay, so we're gonna go over 5 different ways in which the cell holds itself together and resists stretching, being pulled apart, things to that effect. If I punch you in the ribs, or below the ribs in the liver, we don't want that liver breaking, cracking, and falling apart. We want it to be, able to bounce around my fist and come back out. Not that it would do that, because you probably get popping that as well. All right, so the first one is a tight junction. A tight junction, think of a fully welded piece of metal. Can water leak through 2 pieces of metal that are fully welded together? No. So what's the purpose of a tight junction?
Watertight.
Leak-proof.
Leak-proof, watertight. Okay. Where would we want to have that?
Bladder.
Bladder would be one. Where else?
Intestines.
Intestines. How about the stomach? You want those gastric juices floating around in your abdomen? No, probably not. Okay. So we talked about those transitional cells earlier. They go from cuboidal to squamous. They're held together through tight junctions. So even though they stretch, they're still held together so they can't come apart. Okay. Those transitional cells are using tight junctions so they won't be yanked apart when they stretch. Okay. Adhesion junctions, these next 3, what you need to know about them is the proteins that are involved and their purpose. Okay, so the adhesion is going to be like your belt. It's going to resist stretching.
It's going to resist it or make it able to stretch?
It's going to kind of try and resist. It's going to try and keep the cell from stretching from the inside out. Okay, and it's going to hold the cells kind of together so they don't stretch too far if the things get pulled one way or the other. Kind of think of, so they say it's like a belt that holds the cell up, but it really is more for stretching, keeps it from overstretching and bursting. Okay, so it's kind of like you tie a rope around a box, so it doesn't, you put stuff in there, it doesn't